going? Here we go. So welcome to the In Vivo Project podcast, where we talk about real world, real life scenarios that encourage men to embrace vulnerability so they can live life to the fullest. My name's Eric Payton. I'm your host, and today I'm joined by Michael Montgomery. Michael is a husband, father, medic, entrepreneur, CEO, and also a great friend of mine. So Michael, welcome to the In Vivo Project podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah. And made the journey from LA in August to Texas. I remember talking to you and saying, hey man, what's Texas like in August? So you're
hottest month ever.
Yes, it is literally the hottest month of the year. So just wanted to, jump in. You and I met back in 2018, which we've known each other. That means we've known each other for 5 years. And we actually met out in Los Angeles. We were both attending a event with a shaman out in LA that primarily, I was thinking about it earlier, she really only primarily works with entertainers, CEOs, doctors, lawyers, and you have to know her in order to get in and be a part of her, what would be considered a journey. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Obviously, as you recall when we met, I mean, it was kind of instant energy, connection. But what brought me to that first was I have a good friend of mine who I won't say his name because his mother is a very well-known celebrity.
Yeah.
And we had a few lunches and we were sharing our story of kind of some things that we've gone through in our life. And he had recommended going to this journey and, dabbling in ayahuasca to kind of open the mind and try to make some breakthroughs.
Yeah.
And at that time I was searching for that. I was trying to find a way to figure out how to deal with what I felt was like the circus going on in my head. Mm-hmm. So, which led me to that journey and meeting you and, a couple other guys that obviously, I'm still in contact with. So I was searching for that, quiet the noise, if you will.
Yeah, same here. That was a point in my life where I was in the process, fresh of starting to get a divorce from a 10-year relationship. I'd been running my business for about 4 years at that point, and kind of the same thing for me. It was just a time where I was just searching for something. I didn't really exactly know what that something was, and there was a lot of people out there. It was kind of new. I'm not saying it was brand new, but it was a lot newer than it is now. Cause now it's probably, I was thinking about it, one of the most popular things that a lot of people are getting into with the psychedelics, and different modalities of working with a shaman and stuff like that. There's resorts now that are having people come out and do them for weeks at a time, so it's really for me, it was definitely searching for something. And then also just, I wanted to experience what the process was like, because being in this field, I always say, I'm never going to recommend anything that I wouldn't do myself. And I'm not saying that I recommend it, because one thing I can tell you from the crowd that I run with, it's probably 50-50. 50% of the people are out there saying, hey, there's something here. And then the other 50% are saying, no way, I wouldn't recommend it. It's too dangerous. But I think, for me, what I took away from the experience was I definitely would not do it again unless I had a licensed therapist there to walk me through some of the process and give me kind of a treatment plan, if you will, or a guide on how to walk out those things that came up for me. And a lot of it for me too was what I realized after the fact is I already knew all that stuff that was going on. It just kind of allowed me to peek behind the curtain a little bit and say, oh, okay. Yeah, these are the things.
Yeah. What I liked about it, for me, I felt, everyone has a different experience. For me, it allowed me, and we kind of spoke about this earlier, it allowed me to break down walls. I'm a very open person. I'm very transparent, but there's always a block, right? Especially when you're dealing with trauma or anything like you've gone through in your life that you feel that there's this block. That allowed me to just drop down the walls with complete strangers and just be vulnerable. But what was really cool about that was when you and I met, and a couple other guys, was that instant connection. Like walked through the door and it was like, oh, I know this guy.
Yeah.
Even though I just met you.
Yeah.
100%. And it allowed me to just really be open. And as you know how it goes, we set the intention. We take the ayahuasca and then let it do its thing, I guess. And I felt that I was having a good experience, but and I've done it a couple times after, but after that, it's kind of like, what? I think we're wired internally to really kind of work that out in ourselves with the help of someone, or just having that accountability person, if you will.
Yeah. And I totally agree with that. It's like I felt like I got the message that I needed to get. And then from that point forward, it's like, hey, this is a lifelong journey. This is kind of the stuff that I'm probably going to work on for the rest of my life. There is no quote unquote destination. Right. It literally is a journey. And I think, for anybody listening, again, I'm not going to recommend anybody do anything. That's up to your doctor. You definitely want to run it through your doctor. I would definitely say have trained somebody that's trained outside of just a shaman. No offense to any shamans out there, but I believe that, it can be very dangerous. And the real work is after you've gotten that message to really go walk it out on a day-to-day basis.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, I got a message from it too. It's like, well, you spend a lot of money for the weekend for your wife to get sick and for you to get something you kind of already knew.
Right. Yeah. 100%. I think, and that's like that's the danger, is that there are a lot of people, and I know some of them, that they keep going back over and over again. And for anybody that may have an addictive type personality or be an addict, I think it's a very slippery slope to get caught up into that false reality of, hey, this is what life is supposed to look like.
Well, let's go back here a second. Where you just said is, people that constantly are going back.
Yeah.
To me, I see that as, this image of they're chasing something.
Right.
They know that there's something they want to change in their life. They don't know how to start to do it or how to even do it.
Right.
So they think that that's going to open them up to say, okay, this is how I do it. And that's not what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's not giving you the answers. It might reveal something to you to change, but you already know what that is.
Right. Yeah.
So
absolutely. 100%. So but the big part of this podcast is talking about mental health and mental health for guys specifically. So talk just a little bit about what that means for you.
Yeah, I think, mental health was taboo, right? For many years. It's now kind of becoming more mainstream. You're hearing a lot of mental health, self-awareness and those things. I think it was, a taboo for so many years. And as men, we're kind of taught to suck it up, hold things in, and not really deal with emotion, and mental health, you start to think of like, oh, mental health is, am I schizophrenic, sociopathic, any of those things? But mental health is other things, right? Anxiety, it's depression, it's that negative talk that we do to ourselves. And, for me, my mental health, if you will, whereas we know my physiology of my brain started changing as a young kid. At the age of 6, at the age of 6, I was being molested. And that started to change my perspective of trust and really understanding interactions with the people that you're supposed to love and trust.
Yeah.
And for transparency, I had an uncle who was gay, who had a life partner, and his life partner began molesting me at the age of 6. That continued for three years. And during that time, I was ill. I became sick. And I didn't tell my father or my mother at that time because my father was a police officer, right? So I'm thinking, if I tell my dad, he's going to arrest this guy, and my uncle's going to hate me for taking away his life partner, right? Which wouldn't have ever been the case.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I started feeling really comfortable and trusting of my doctor that that I opened up to him and I said, hey, there's something I need to share. I need to tell you this. I needed to get it off my chest, right? Being vulnerable and open. So I shared with him, hey, this is what's been happening to me. I just wanted to tell you because I don't really know what to do about it. Well, he too is a pedophile. So now I'm at the age of 10. So he saw that as there's no grooming that needed to really take place. The only grooming he had to do was with my parents. Yeah. And it worked, right? Because then I started every summer, I was being sent to his house for, he was like, oh, we'll do his checkups, take care of him and everything else. And that went on until probably the age of 14. The problem with that was it wasn't just, physical, it also was mental.
100%.
So that changed, again, the physiology of the brain and the way I processed things and the way I would have, connection with people changed me greatly. So I think mental health for men is a huge topic because we have this image of what we think man is supposed to be and what things we should and should not, deal with. And that was one that was like just put in a box for so many years and never spoken about.
Yeah. And I think that's, it's such a good point because regardless, I mean, you're talking about your particular experience, which was 100% traumatic, right? And what happens, I think, with men is they get stuck in that pattern of the trauma, meaning that, it could be something completely different that had nothing related to that, but you stay in that same mindset. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think that, we were talking about this earlier. I think if you look at mental health as, again, not the psychiatric definition of schizophrenia or things of that nature, just basic mental health of being healthy in the mind, right? Everyone has a mental health issue. I believe that.
Yeah.
Because everyone that's walking this planet has experienced some form of pain or trauma, right? And immediately when the brain senses trauma or anything out of the norm, it's going to release the chemicals to protect you.
Right.
It goes back to our old ancestral ways of hunter-gatherer. We become in that fight or flight, and we call it monkey brain, right? We're in that monkey brain. So the more of that exposure, the more you're in that monkey brain of, there's a lion outside my door.
Yeah.
I'm always on alert. I'm always on, as we talk about when you're in the military too, like a head on a swivel.
Yeah.
And that's not a way you want to continue to live because you're not able to enjoy the moments. You're not able to be in the moment. And, that's where I think everyone has their form of it. Yeah. It could be anxiety. And, anxiety is nothing more than worrying about a future event that might not even ever happen.
Correct. Yeah.
And, and I think everyone has that form of it and they just don't process it or don't have the outlet to discuss it or they feel ashamed for it. And there's nothing to be ashamed about.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing is you've got to be able to talk about those events that happen to you to just get that out. I think that's one of the biggest things is talking about the things that have happened to you that are causing shame and guilt. And then literally realizing that you're not in that situation anymore. But saying it out loud is the biggest thing that I think men need to do is be able to say that out loud and understand that they're not stuck in that situation and you can reprogram your brain to think and do things differently outside of that trauma.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about not forgetting your past, but not allowing it to be what's driving you in the present, right?
Yes.
Not living in the past, but not forgetting it either, right?
Yeah.
Freeing yourself is the word I like to use. Free yourself from the past.
Yeah.
Because that's already gone.
Mm-hmm.
You have your today and hopefully you have your tomorrow, right? So don't be in that past because if you live in that situation every day of every moment you're awake, you're not moving forward. You're still stuck in that circle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it. So talk just, you were a medic assigned to the Marines for how long were you doing that now?
Oh, I was with Marines for 12 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So talk about your time as a medic and how that has shaped you after all those experiences.
Yeah. I mean, I think I was driven to being a medic because of my experiences of, having health issues as a kid and whatever, and the sense of service. But the real reason I wanted to become a medic was I have a great uncle of mine who was a 2-time Purple Heart recipient, from Vietnam. And, he came back because, he had a good medic. And I felt like, hey, I need to go and serve and do that as well.
Yeah.
And to be in transparency with the corpsman, the Navy corpsman, you have 2 routes, right? I mean, it's changed since I've been in. I think it's now mandatory that you have to go to FMF training, but you can go to corpsman training and you go to the Navy side and you're on a ship or in a hospital or working in clinics, where I knew I wanted to go with the Marine Corps. So I went from Navy boot camp to my A school corpsman training to FMF training in Camp Lejeune. And that's some arduous training, especially back when I went. It wasn't that there were no stress cards.
Right.
It was
full on.
You either perform and get graduate, or you're in the fleet, working on a ship and seeing patients on a ship. And that was not what I wanted to be doing. So, it was a great experience because I learned everything about the Marine Corps. They walk like, talk like, and act like a Marine. And every Marine, as you know, love their doc.
Right. I mean, I was in the Marine Corps and we do consider you a Marine.
Right. Yeah. Because we live with you, we do everything with you. And, as we were talking about this earlier, a lot of even the Marines will say, you guys are crazy son of bitches, because you will run towards the bullets because you got to go out and rescue the guy who's down in the middle of someone trying to take your life, and you're willing to lay your life down to go and, save another. And, that was how it was. You just are trained and wired to just go towards the danger. Don't run from it. Yeah. It was a great experience.
Yeah. So. And I think that's a good analogy for the guys listening to hear that what you just said, run towards the fear, right? And I think a lot of times in life, we tend to retreat when we're getting fearful. I mean, it's a old saying, but fear is nothing but false evidence appearing real, right? So being able to acknowledge that and say, most of the time, this fear that I'm having, whether it's with my career, or my relationships, or fill in the blank, whatever it may be, most of the time, if you'll just take those few steps towards it, that fear that you have or that anxiety that you have tends to dissipate. So I think that's a great analogy.
Yeah, we go through so much repetition, right? We call it practice.
Right.
Practice for the big game. And the big game in the military is war.
Yeah, right.
Well, I got to play in the big game.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for the repetition and I think some of my own mental toughness, if you will, it's hard to get through all that, right? We see that today. We see guys that come back and are struggling because the human brain is not equipped to do the things and see the things that we see in a combat situation.
Yeah.
And I've often said this, during my time in Iraq, I saw the best of humanity and I saw the worst of humanity.
Yeah.
And to try to reconcile that is not an easy process. And then you come home and you're now, in this more of a calm situation, but are you really? Because not in your mind.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing. The brain doesn't know the difference between a combat situation and a perceived combat situation that's not a combat situation, just walking around. And I think, again, that goes back to, kind of what we're talking about. You've got to be able to have that mindset that, most of the time, whatever I'm worried about is not going to materialize. And I do need to have some good guys around me that I can lean on, and again, that's another thing that I'm really want to be passionate about is helping guys connect with other guys that are on the same team, if you will, to help them on this journey called life.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of spoke about this earlier. Isn't it kind of ironic or in the military, when you're in trouble, you yell for help. Mm-hmm. If you are, as a situation or an experience, if your magazine is out of ammo, you're letting everybody know, reloading.
Right.
Because that means cover me.
Right.
Or, hey, I'm hurt. Like even if it's a sprained ankle, but you're in the middle of combat, you're yelling for help. Mm-hmm. But in our day-to-day life, when we feel struggles, we're not yelling out for help.
Yeah.
There might be signs that we are, but not everybody's paying attention.
Yeah.
But we're not being vulnerable enough to say, pick up that phone and go, yo, I'm dealing with something. I need to talk.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of times that I'll pick up the phone and call somebody and, just trying to connect. And I'm like, hey, what's been going on? And it's like, oh, I've been really in a bad spot. And I'm like, why haven't you picked up the phone? And it's easier said than done. And I think, it goes back again to my whole mission of starting the In Vivo Project and this podcast is to empower men. Hey, it's okay. Like, we're all human beings here walking around having an experience called life, and things are going to happen, and being able to pick up the phone and call somebody when you're struggling doesn't mean that you're weak. It's actually the opposite.
That's absolutely right. I mean, there's actually an image. It's again, as you said that, the image popped to my head. There's an image of a corpsman fully stacked with his medic bag, his gear, his weapon, and he's fireman carrying another Marine. Mm-hmm. And the caption reads, he's not heavy, he's my brother.
Yeah. Right.
Why don't we carry that out into, call it the civilian world? We're all here trying to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And, men especially who are going through these struggles, they don't need to be doing it alone. Mm. It's like, hey, for a minute, I got you.
Yeah.
I'll carry you.
Yeah.
Until you can get on your feet and carry yourself. I got you. Like, let me walk alongside you. Let me help you.
Yeah.
So
100%, man. I think we just need more men to step up and say, hey, listen, I'm going to go first here, set the example. And by living my life a certain way, that's going to give other guys permission to live their life the same way.
100%.
So you were actually a FMF instructor, which is a Fleet Marine Force instructor. Talk, a little bit about that process of what that looked like. And I think we're hitting on a topic here that all these experiences that you had in the military directly correlate out into the real world.
Sure. Let me step back though, because me becoming an instructor wasn't a plan. It was more of a promise. Okay. So while I was in Iraq, I literally made a deal, to whomever. I'm like, all right, if I come out of here with both my arms, both my legs, and some sensibilities to myself, I'm not going back. I had a 3-month-old son. I wasn't trying to go back because, I'm a firm believer at this. If you're at the casino and you have a winning hand, cash out.
Right.
Don't stay, because if you do, you're going to lose. The house is always going to win.
Yeah, house is always a winner.
Always, right? Well, combat, in my opinion, it was very similar. I made it out alive. If I go back again, because back then it was like, you're home for 3 months, you're out again. The rotation was unbelievable. Like, guys were home for only 3 months and back out for almost a year, coming home for 3 months, back out again. And I wasn't having it. Yeah. So I saw the way through. I'm like, okay, well, I have a pretty messed up knee. I had to get some knee surgery. That's going to keep me on non-deployable status for a minute. It wasn't that I was trying to avoid there to be support, to my guys. It was, I realized right then and there, I'm like, I have a responsibility to my son. Yeah. At the time, because now I have a son and a daughter, but that was the primary, goal. Like, I got to be there for him. Yeah. So I knew that an instructor billet was a non-deployable billet, and I wanted to make sure that I could train these guys to go to combat, so that they too could come home to their families. So yeah, I became an instructor, and I did that for 3.5 years, and there were great moments of it, and then there were some sad moments, right? We'll call it survivor's guilt. Some of these guys that we would graduate, and as soon as they graduated and they attached to their Marine unit, they were deployed to either Afghanistan or Iraq, and 3 months later, you're getting notifications that they were KIAs. Right. So, you deal with the survivor guilt of, could I have done something different? Could I have trained them better? where do we fall? Where do we fail them within our training? And you have to realize real quick, it's nothing you did. It's,
Sure.
when your ticket's punched, it's punched. It doesn't matter if you're in a combat situation or you're crossing the road. It is what it is.
Right.
But I enjoyed that part of, being an instructor, because there was, I think back then it was 8 weeks, 10 weeks or whatever. But, the first half of it, you're their worst enemy. They don't like you.
Right.
But I made it a goal in the second portion, half of it, I was their mentor, so that the day of graduation and they were getting their FMF pin, we were high-fiving.
Yeah.
Because I made a pact with myself to get to know something about their personality.
Yeah.
So if I saw something off, I was able to say, something's not right with this person.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a family issue? Is it a financial issue? Is it fear issue? What is it?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, 100%. And I think, again, that directly correlates to, what I do with my coaching clients is, in the beginning, there's a lot of people that are like, man, I thought I liked this guy, and I too experienced that in the military with the, 13-week boot camp for the Marine Corps, man. When you first come in there, man, you're just like, what in the hell have I gotten myself into? But by the end of it, you have such a bond with not only the guys that you're with, but with those drill instructors that have been with you for those 13 weeks. And I think there's a magic to that process that I think more guys could use that. And I think now more than ever, guys are hungry for that type of relationship with other guys, because we were talking, you're 51, next month I'll be 50, I fit, the big 50 club. I feel like for the first time, like I've lived enough life where I'm not looked at as just some young kid, but I'm not some old guy that's ready to, hang my hat up and take my boots off and that kind of stuff and lay around and just, lay by the pool all day, but I've got something to contribute. And that's really, I think, one of the big things that's connected to me to you is that you do have that passion, you do have that pure heart, and you really do want to help guys live their best life.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's interesting as we talk about that of going in the military and we talk about the traumas even of boot camp, right? Most, and I don't say all, but most of us who've gone in the military, most of us probably had some traumatic event in our life. It's kind of what led us there, right? It's not like, someone put me in a car and said, you're joining the military.
Right.
That happens to some.
Yeah.
That wasn't my case.
Yeah.
And it's funny, as I've done my work and have had therapy, my therapist even said, you went to a situation that was probably not the perfect scenario for the traumas that you've already experienced.
Right.
Because all I did was ignite more trauma.
Right.
Right. We were talking about this earlier, how, sometimes we have difficulty sleeping. And I had a sleep study through the VA, and the doctor was like, when did your sleep disorder begin? I said, the moment I stepped off the bus, because you're getting woken up by a screaming drill instructor, 2:33 in the morning. And that's just consistent. And then you put yourself in a combat situation. There's not real sleep. We call it rest.
Sure.
Because every minute of every day is like, is this the day?
Yeah.
So that disrupts the brain.
Right.
And to reprogram that, it's like, that's why when I was an instructor, one of the things, you had asked me this earlier of what's one of the things you taught the guys that they could take into their daily life. And it's interesting that I was able to teach them this during my instructor days, but I have a hard time, I'm a work in progress, doing it in my own daily life. My wife will tell you that. It's like, be in the now, right? Because in the military, as you know, especially in combat, don't look at the week or don't look at the day you get in country. When am I leaving? Because you don't know when that day's coming.
Yeah.
You know this. You have today and you have certain evolutions that are going to have to happen. Get through one evolution, get to the next. And we have to do that in our daily life, right? What does my day look like today? What do I want to accomplish? And then let tomorrow figure itself out. We are so conditioned to think, and again, goal setting is important. What's my 5-year plan look like? What's my 10-year plan look like? Well, you might not have tomorrow. So, and I'm learning that now at 51, take more time to be present, enjoy the family and the relationships you have, because, as I was saying, I haven't seen a funeral ever with a U-Haul behind it. The material things we acquire aren't coming with us.
No.
But
it's a small box we're going out in.
It's a small box, right? You spend your whole life to acquire and you get 6 feet of dirt, right? So I look at it as I want that to be the legacy of a bunch of people there talking about how I impacted or touched their life.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Right.
It's not about, he has this legacy, he had this business empire. No, that's not it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of people are pushing and struggling for. It's like, dude, that doesn't matter.
Yeah. People are really looking for, connection, quality of relationships, somebody they can feel safe around to, just really be themselves and not feel judged for if they've got certain things going on in their lives, right?
100%. We were talking about mental health even when we talk about PTSD, and we were talking about this earlier. It's like, I really wish they would reterm it, right? Because it's post-traumatic stress disorder. That's a negative connotation right there, disorder.
Yeah.
As if I'm broken or there's something faulty with me.
Yeah.
So now think of the people who are carrying that and thinking that they're broken or they have a disorder and they don't know how to fix that.
Yeah.
But PTSD is not just combat related. Yeah. PTSD is, I was in a motor vehicle accident. That can cause trauma. The whole world just went through PTSD. It was called the COVID-19 pandemic.
Right.
Everyone's world changed. Yeah. So there's some post-traumatic stress associated with that. What people don't recognize now, like they're thinking to themselves, I'm not the same I was before, because your brain biochemistry has changed.
Yeah.
How are you going to rewire that? How are you going to get back to, I think it's human beings, and I think it's either dolphins or whales that have the frontal cortex for logic and reasoning.
Yeah.
And for those listeners who aren't aware of this, is when you go through trauma or you go through pain of any kind, the brain sends out different chemicals. So those neural pathways, they don't fire all the way to the frontal cortex.
Yeah.
So you're not getting that message, and you become reactive instead of taking time to pause, process, and then respond accordingly. So you are constantly in this reactionary state of mind, and that's not a fun way to live.
Yeah. 100%, and that kind of goes into, I think this whole thing with masculinity and what that looks like for men, which when you said respond versus react, that kind of brought that up for me, is the masculinity thing. So, for being a guy, obviously, what do you see with guys in that masculinity role now?
Well, now I think we're starting to see a little bit of a shift, but I think for many years, masculinity has been distorted in the definition of what is masculinity, right? Especially if you've had any sexual trauma. That's already going to slice that masculinity concept in your mind in half. Masculinity is about being vulnerable, being true to who you are, being open about the things you've experienced. It's being that soft place for someone who's going through trauma or issues in themselves. It's being able to admit your emotions. And yes, men do cry.
Right.
Okay. And that's okay. Yeah. So I think that's being masculine. I'm going to go back into, earlier years of what people thought masculinity was, being this, toxic masculinity of like, I'm a man and hear me roar. No, we're, you talk about man and woman, we're equal, right? It's okay to be soft. It's okay to cry in front of your spouse. It's okay to be, a moment of weakness and saying, I don't know how I'm going to get through this, or how do I do this? You don't always have to feel like you're holding up the globe,
Right.
You don't. It's just, that to me is real man. That's being masculine.
Yeah.
It's not that false image we've all been shown.
It's not sustainable, and it's definitely not beneficial if you're trying to work through your trauma, because that automatically goes back to that point where I'm just going to shut this down. Real men don't really talk about their feelings. Real men don't show any emotion, that kind of stuff. And big part of why I want to do the podcast and talk about these subjects is to encourage guys. Hey, nobody's saying they're perfect, but here is what real masculinity looks like. Real masculinity is able to assess the situation and respond as opposed to reacting. And that takes some time and some, therapy and some training. The structure piece, which goes back to the military. That's why, specifically probably in the last 6 months, I've really leaned back into that structure piece, and I'm a guy that I don't really like people to tell me what to do, even my own self.
Right. No one tells me what to do.
Yeah,
not even me.
yeah, exactly, man. Totally. But I've found by providing that structure for myself, it alleviates all this downtime where that, as you pointed out earlier, that voice that will start talking to you if there's downtime and there's not much going on, it alleviates some of that. It never completely goes away, but I think another part of it is when that voice comes up, have a conversation with it and say, hey, I'm not listening to this BS today because that's nothing but BS. That's not who I am.
Oh, exactly.
So leave that stuff on the side of the road, if you will.
Oh yeah, for sure. We were saying this earlier. I was jokingly saying, before, I was like, I didn't need any enemies. I had one in the back of my head constantly just gnawing at me, right? This negative self-talk, if you will.
Yeah.
And you have to learn how to squash that voice and have a conversation with it. Yeah. Like, you're not good enough for this. And you're like, no, hold on a minute.
Right.
Let's unpack this for a second.
100%.
And I think that's an important factor of also like breaking through certain things, of hearing it, pausing, listening to it and go, okay, first, where is this coming from? Yeah. This isn't fact. This isn't real.
Yeah.
And have a conversation and change it. Because again, the more you talk negative to yourself, what are you doing?
Right.
You're staying in that.
You're reinforcing that negative loop.
Correct.
And I think, the third thing is providing safety for not only yourself, but for other guys, and it's not about, I'm not encouraging people to like continually sit around and have a pity party, because I think after a certain period of time, it's like, if these same things keep coming up and we're not figuring out ways to improve in those areas that are keeping us stuck, then we are in that pity party loop. But being able to encourage guys to say, hey, listen, it's okay, like, to talk about the things that are going on with you, but let's actually come up with an action plan, take a snapshot of what's going on and what are the things that we can do to improve. And usually it's just like a couple of things that if you'll change, your life will dramatically get better.
Oh, for sure. Again, we go back to the military stuff, and it's all applicable to normal life. But like when you're going through certain training, like when you go and say guys who go through Navy SEALs and they're in buds, they're dive. There's a dive buddy. You always have a buddy. Yeah. I was a scuba diver. You don't enter the water alone.
Yeah.
Well, why? Because you're going to have a moment where there's danger, where you're too tired, you can't swim.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Right.
You need help.
Yeah.
You want someone there to help you. It's the same thing here.
Yeah.
In normal day-to-day life, when we're having an issue or trouble, you need a buddy, like call them accountability partners.
Yeah.
Hey, I need you to hold me accountable for this or that and be okay with that.
Yeah. Submit to it. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if someone says, oh, I want to work out, I want to get physically fit, I need an accountability buddy. Okay. Yeah. How come you're not at the gym today?
Yeah.
All right. I'm on my way.
Yeah, it works. Yeah. We were talking, just having a coach improves whatever you're doing by 70% just by having a coach.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of times it's just accountability, coming up with a plan. It's just like anything else. Sometimes you work a plan and it completely tanks, but you got some clues there on maybe a couple of things that worked, and you take that plan and rework it continuously until you get the results that you're looking for.
Yeah,
so
100%.
Good stuff. So, talk about, man, you've had ton of, health challenges. And, I think it's, we talked about this, like it's kind of made you think about, like, career wise, maybe making a transition. And I think for a lot of guys, there's a lot of guys out there that might be in like a similar situation where they're thinking from going from one career to the other. So talk about that just a little bit.
Yeah. I'm a 2-time cancer survivor. I had a stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and was given a 6-month prognosis. Obviously, I'm here. I came through that. In 2016, I was diagnosed with kidney cancer. Before that, in 2012, I was an avid cyclist because, we kind of talked about this too. In channeling my trauma and or pain, instead of turning to drugs or alcohol, I became a PT guru, like just running all the time, triathlons, et cetera.
Yeah.
And then during the pandemic, I suffered 2 heart attacks.
Yeah.
So you would have thought that coming through the cancer, surviving getting hit by a car at 55 miles an hour at 2012 on Pacific Coast Highway in California, that, and then that would have opened my mind to be like, okay, there's something bigger here for you to be doing.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I really had the heart attack that I started really going inward and being more perspective of, man, my lights could have gone out that night. Like that could have been it. And it happened on my son's 20th birthday. Like we were walking up a hill coming back from eating dinner and it like put me on my knees. And it, of course, like most men out there who are having heart attacks, I denied that I was having one because I didn't think I was. I'm like, at the time I was 49. Like, nah, this can't be. But it made me think like there's something bigger for me to be doing because look at, to your point, all these things I've come through.
Yeah.
I got to be able to give back somehow, some way. And while my career that I'm doing now has been fruitful and it's provided me a great lifestyle, it's not touching the soul, right? It's not really giving the point where I'm able to give back and help other guys. I shared with you earlier, when I was younger and I got sick, I had a chemotherapeutic drug that was known to have a side effect of seizures. Well, my luck is if there's a side effect, I'm getting it.
Yeah.
If anything is possible, I'm having it come my way.
Yeah.
And I wound up having a seizure. And in order to stop a seizure, you have to give Valium. They pushed Valium in me too fast. So I went into respiratory arrest, which then stopped my heart, lost my sight, lost my hearing for 10 days. I woke up in the hospital and my mother was looking out a window. And I remember asking her, and I grew up in a very religious home. My mom was very strict, but I said to her, Mom, why is God allowing this to happen to me? And like in an instant, she said, don't you ask why, you ask what? Because you're not the only kid on this ward. What are you going to learn from this? What are you going to do with it? And what are you going to do to give back? Because you're going to get through this. Like she was my sense of strength. And I think going through my life, that's always sat in my subconscious, right? So every time adversity hits, I'm going, okay, what am I learning from this? What am I going to do with it? And what am I going to do to give back? So the heart attack really made me go, okay, what am I going to do to help other guys who are struggling to figure out how do I get out of my own way? Like I'm going through something. I don't know how to get out of it. I need a little help. We talk about coach, right? Football player, any sport, you have a coach.
Yeah.
So you're better. You perform better. Military, we have a drill instructor. That's a coach.
Yeah.
But in life, which life is a game,
Yeah.
Who's your coach? And some people out there, you have a spouse that's not supportive. You don't have anyone that's really there being your cheerleader. It can become a very lonely place.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate enough. I have a wife who's extremely supportive. That's my coach. That's my cheerleader.
Yeah.
I have people like yourself, but there's a lot of guys out there that don't have that and they need it.
Yeah. 100%. Well, I just want to encourage you that you have been an inspiration to me, ever since I've known you. Like when we met, it was like this instant connection, call it a Marine Corps thing, military thing. But I think more than anything, it was your, just your passion for whatever it is you're talking about. You're a very passionate guy. I think you've got a pure heart, and I really believe that you want to help guys be the best version of themselves. And we need that. Guys need that more than ever. We need role models. And so I just want to honor you and say you are that role model. And I think a lot of guys are going to be able to benefit from that. And I think you've got a bright future. And I just want to say to whoever's listening right now, if any of this stuff is resonated with you and you're interested to hear more, you can find us on theinvivoproject.com. All social media is theinvivoproject.com. So if you're struggling and you're on the fence, please reach out. And even if we can't help you, we can definitely do our best to try to point you in the right direction. So Monty, thanks for coming on. And I hope that this is not the last time you're on. I hope we continue to do this on a regular basis.
Maybe it'll be winter time next time.
Absolutely. All right.
Thank you. All right.